guys, my name's Yi Xuan. I'm a fresh graduate from the US, and I'm here today with Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Long. I lead business development for Siemens Energy.
Okay, so nice to meet you. I was at your seminar just now, and I think some of the points you raised were really quite interesting. So I wanted to first ask you about the fact that you mentioned you moved across 5 countries when you were young before doing your university. And so how does that shape your worldview, and how would you say it was for better or worse?
Definitely for better. I recommend that experience to anybody, really, if you have a chance to travel and work so widely. I grew up in 5 countries, I've worked in a further 20, and I continue to seek out these experiences that put me in an uncomfortable position, because I think that's where growth really happens. It taught me as a young child to be very resilient and to figure out who I really was, because you have to reinvent yourself, find new friends, navigate the landscape freshly every few years.
Yeah, that's nice. All right. So also you did mention that after your first moves in your career, you went out to do some entrepreneurship. So how's that experience like, and how do some of the lessons that you've learned play into your experience at work now?
Yeah, that was a super fun experience, working with friends from business school and learning to do things totally from scratch. In working in large companies, you have the luxury of having professionals who are really good at their jobs, and marketing or supply chain or strategy there to support you, and then your role is really about pulling people together. Versus in a startup, there's nobody. It's just you and your PowerPoint, and it's up to you to figure out what to do and say and how to make it happen. And so that was a lot of fun to test myself that I really can work with few resources and to hustle. But honestly, now that I'm back in the corporate world, I see a lot of similarities, because in business development, starting new projects, working with new clients, it's a lot of the same kind of story, where you really have to understand customer needs and what you're going to do to meet that.
So I think one question that I was wondering was, what are some of the most in-demand skills in your current field right now, and how can someone develop them? And because personally I've been through a couple of BD roles as well, internships and stuff. So I was wondering how does that work in a large MNC like Siemens, that operates in a somewhat traditional market?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely looking for people who are integrators, people who can work across many different silos, who can understand the bigger picture, who can pull things together and work with many different kinds of people. Always, of course, keeping customer needs at the forefront to come up with new solutions. And so I would say, we're looking for people who have that ability, who naturally try to seek out lots of different types of information, lots of different new experiences, and to try to integrate all of that.
It's I was wondering, because for most of my BD stuff, it was more of smaller to mid-tier companies. So when you guys do it, is it more of on a large scale, between other corporations, governments and stuff? Is that how it works for you guys?
Generally so, yes. I mean, we have customers of all different scales, but doing new projects in the energy infrastructure space generally is quite a large capital expenditure undertaking. And so it's quite normal for us to be working on projects that have capex in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and will take 5 or 10 or even more years to come to fruition. So often we are working with very large corporations and government bodies. And so our task is to understand how to navigate that, their constraints, their priorities, and how to make things happen. Then again, we also have small customers who are entrepreneurs, who are starting up industrial parks, who are starting up new factories, and we support them as well, because we believe that decarbonization happens at all scales in the energy sector, and we have solutions that can fit all of these needs.
So, I mean, just a little added part, when you say you guys do support little companies as well, entrepreneurs and smaller scale projects, how does that fit into the general business model? Is it just a scaled down version of what you guys are doing on a larger scale, or is it a separate thing?
Well, we have products that fit different scales, right? So for example, if you take gas turbines, we have ones that operate at kind of the 1 or 2 megawatt range up to 600 megawatts. And so there's different products that fit different niches in the industry. And of course, then your delivery model will be adapted to that particular implementation.
Okay. Right. So with that. I think the last question would be if you have any tips or advice you would give to soon-to-be or fresh graduates out there right now. And also, what would you do differently if you could go back in time maybe for 15, 20 years?
That's a cool question. For people starting their careers, I would say definitely always seek out the zone of discomfort. Early in your career, that's when you should be working really hard, learning really hard, always trying to reach out for more. So always say yes to the new project opportunity, say yes to the new country transfer, say yes to doing a special project with people you've never worked with before, because it's all about collecting that suite of experiences that will help guide you later on.
How about if you could turn back time, right? Is there anything you would have done differently for yourself, or were there any big mistakes that you made that you might want to go back and rectify or something like that, or has it been smooth?
I think a lot of my career has been pretty unexpected. Opportunities make themselves available, and they often are not things that you would have really planned out. So I wouldn't say anything that I regret, but advice I would have given to my younger self would be to network more. I think in my 20s I was working really hard, 100-hour weeks, and use that a bit as an excuse to not spend more effort in networking. And I see more and more that it's an incredibly important part of one's career.
So how would you advise people who don't really have much experience with networking? What are some of the first steps? Simple things that they could take a mental note of moving forward.
I'd say be a joiner, right? Be someone who just joins a lot of clubs and organizations and industry bodies. Just go, show up, be curious. People love it when they hear that you're there to learn from them and that you just want to understand what their world is like. Nobody will ever say no to answering more questions around that. So join and don't be shy.
Okay, perfect.